Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Uh, how's it going? Been kind of a long day today, but uh, that's how it goes in the feedlot business. And yeah, it was a long day. Uh, the old banquet beer is tasting mighty fine right now. Um, I've been doing a lot of reading on, and well, by reading I mean audiobooks here lately on some conspiracy theories. Not necessarily that's the main topic, or like the I guess the main driver of the story, but more that it is it's mentioned in there. So I'm working on a book about the Bush family. And while they don't really mention conspiracy theories, and they're not really driving a conspiracy theory, um, there's like they spend a lot of time on the JFK assassination and the Nixon impeachment, the Watergate stuff, and how uh, George H.W. Bush was very active, at least behind the scenes. They're in both of those, and so while they never did really like push the conspiracy theory angle, but they did spend a lot of time on it. And then I've always been just interested in conspiracy theories, and they go way back, from like the Freemasons and you know the oh the what's that Indiana Jones movie, the Holy Grail, the Freemasons, Knights Templar, the Holy Grail, um, all the way to through to like the Lincoln assassination. And there's so many of them, and they interest me a lot. So anyway, I wanted to kind of ramble about that. And but before I do, I got to tell you about my sponsor, and that's Loma Livestock, owned and operated there in Loma, Colorado by my good buddy George Raftopoulos. They're located at 1369 12 and a half Road. Uh, they got a sale going every Wednesday, with cows and singles starting at 9 o'clock, followed by the feeders at 11. They are an NHTC certified sale barn, and they got a lot of good cattle going through there. So if you like to sell your cattle, buy some cattle, or just go and look at cattle, go check them out. You can give them a call, 970-858-9988, or check them out online at lomalivestock.com. So anyway, I posted on all the social media pages here just a little bit ago with questions about what your favorite conspiracy theories are, and what you'd like me to talk about. So I'm not going to go real deep into um, any one particular one tonight. I just kind of wanted to tell you about why I'm so fascinated by it, and why I lean more towards the conspiratorial side of things. Mostly it's because there's a lot of truths that um, started out as conspiracy theories, and kind of like the whole Bay of Pigs thing. That was originally kind of a conspiracy theory that that the CIA was behind it. Well, it turns out that it was 100% true. Um, and there's been a lot of stuff throughout the years. The Gulf of Tonkin's another one that was you know brushed off as a conspiracy theory, and then it turned out to be true. So there's a lot of stuff that I guess I lean more towards not ruling it out, even if it sounds crazy, because there's been a lot of stuff happened and perpetrated by the government. So I, I kind of lean into the conspiracy a little bit more than a lot of people, I think. But yes, Sam, I will cover the Epstein conspiracy because that's by far one of my favorites. There's a lot of good ones. JFK is always a good one because uh, even if there's a grain of truth in any of the conspiracies, whether it be the mob, whether it be the CIA, whether it be Lyndon Johnson, if there's a grain of truth to any of those, that's a big deal. At least in the United States, other parts of the world that's kind of everyday practice. But where we are going on 300 years as a country, and aside from the Civil War, there's always been a peaceful transfer of power. And so when if there's any grain of truth to a government agency or an organized crime association or family, or in the case of Kennedy, probably multiple crime families, uh, and just other members of the government taking out the elected president. That's it's a big deal in as far as U.S. Politics goes. And so it's and even with JFK, uh, there's like just right off the bat, people were calling conspiracy on it, and then once it gets investigated more and more, it just brings up more questions than it ever does answers, and that's no, all that stuff is kind of fascinating to me. So I I kind of wanted to gauge everybody else's interest on it, and see see what ones I really need to cover. So the Epstein one is that's probably the most recent one. I think I'm sure there's another couple ones going on. I guess there's the one Taz said on the Facebook page, the Kobe helicopter crash, diverting attention from Trump's defense team. I don't put much stock in that one. I haven't heard anything uh, of that nature as far as a conspiracy, even though it's only been a couple of days. That's the first I've heard of that. I would say the major media companies did a better job of diverting attention from Trump's legal team, and they're not one um, to shy away from bashing Trump. So if Trump's legal team was terrible and they needed to be exposed, I guarantee you they would have been already, because the mainstream media, if you haven't noticed, is not a real big fan of Trump. So I'm not gonna spend much time on that one. So next in line, as far as recency, would be Epstein, and that one is so, like I've said many times, that is so intriguing because it should be a huge, 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 huge news story, like on the level of the Trump impeachment or any impeachment, because at its very, very like base facts that we know already, it involves the highest levels of government in the United States and the British royal family. It involves sex trafficking, it involves pedophilia, and it involves just like every type of crazy spy novel type shit you could dream up. And it gets next to no coverage by any like large corporate mainstream media organization, not even Fox News. Like they spent some time on it, but I mean, like, if it should be, it just drive the headline every single night, but it don't. And and it's just it's really crazy. And then you get the fact that he he's in a maximum security prison, or I guess if you go even further back, he's already been convicted of soliciting sex to a minor, uh, and he got like 13 months jail time, but it wasn't really jail time. It was like very light duty, um, white collar prison that he. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but my wife calls a cat like a crazy woman. Um, but it was he stayed in prison overnight basically, and then they let him out during the day, and this was for soliciting prostitution with a minor, convicted felon, and he gets let off on this, 13-month work release basically, and it was just out in the open, and the guy that prosecuted him ended up being in Trump's cabinet and ended up resigning over the whole deal. And he was on record saying that the reason he got such a light sentence when he prosecuted Epstein was because he belongs to intelligence, and whether that means CIA or whether that means any sort of foreign intelligence, because Epstein is a Jewish guy, is rumored to have connections with the Mossad, which is the Israeli version of the CIA. And so you've got the highest levels of government. You've got the number one intelligence spy apparatus in the country involved. You've got a former president, a current president, a member of the British royal family. You've got sex trafficking. You got pedophilia, and you've got obvious government corruption upon the conviction. And that's all like 20 years ago. Like that all that happened. I'm not sure when he was convicted of this original crime, but it was a long time ago. So we haven't even got to the stuff uh, on Epstein from just this year. So if you follow at all, even kind of loosely, conservative talk radio or conservative media, like you've heard Epstein for quite a while now, and you're kind of aware of the situation, especially with Bill Clinton being so heavily implicated uh, with Jeffrey Epstein. So Epstein was known to have this island out in the Caribbean where he would take these high-powered people, and they would have orgies and whatever. And it's all rumored, I guess. I don't know if there's any concrete facts that happened. I think there probably is. I don't know for sure. So I'm not gonna provide any sources. Uh, but then there is flight records of, um, and this place was called Orgy Island, and there's flight records of Bill Clinton being on this plane, which was also known to have a bunch of like swingers parties and orgies and stuff uh, in the air. The literal version of the Mile High Club, and it was called the Lolita Express. And Bill Clinton is on flight records of having flown on the Lolita Express like 26 times. So, um, it's a crazy deal before you even get to the part that happened this year. So like that all happened, like I said, several years ago. If you listen to talk radio, you've heard it. And then this year he gets he gets pulled back into prison and gets indicted on counts of sex trafficking. And it looks like it's a major deal. Looks like they've got a pretty solid case on him. And with the Clinton kill list being another conspiracy theory that I truly believe one of these days will bear out to be fact. I don't know when that happens. We all know it happened. Nobody can prove it, but we all know it happened. The Clinton kill list is a very real thing. So there goes old Jeffrey boy into prison, and everybody called it. That has been following this. Everybody called it. Said, R.I.P. Epstein. Or it was just, everybody called. He was going to get suicided, as most of the Clinton victims tend to do. They either get, mugged and shot, or they shoot themselves. And in Epstein's case, hangs himself. And so he goes into prison. Everybody calls it. He attempts suicide one time, which they had on tape, but then they accidentally deleted it, I think. So then he gets put on suicide watch for like a week, something like that. Then they pull him off suicide watch, and like the very next day, he is found dead in his cell. They also transferred out his roommate or cellmate at right around that same time, the day that he got out or got off of suicide watch. And and then he's found dead, supposedly hung himself. Then you have the coroner. The coroner shows that he hung himself. And then you have some independent people review the autopsy, find some broken bones in his neck that are highly unusual when it comes to hanging. It's more similar with strangulation, and indicating a murder rather than a suicide, which we all know it is. I mean, there's no question about that. We all know. And and then for some reason, the media just they'll mention it, and it's the only time they do simply reporting the facts or reporting the news, because they don't go into any detail, but they're very kind of unbiased about it. It just, here's what happened, blah blah blah, here's the official statement, and then it just moving on. It's one of the few cases that I've seen of like no political bias in the actual story, because it just says Epstein was found dead in his cell. Official statement is it's ruled a suicide. Moving on. But that in itself indicates some sort of political bias, but I don't know whether to point fingers at Republican or Democrat or both on that one. More than anything, I think it points towards like the overall intelligence, like defense contractor, military industrial complex, if you will, who are heavy hitters in both parties. So this whole American empire deal, where we don't actually take over countries, but we kind of put our people in there, and then it looks like they're running their own country, like Iraq, like we tried to do in Iran, like we tried to do all over South America. And all this stuff, it costs a lot of money, But it also makes even more money for the people that supply it. So all your defense contractors like Boeing and Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and and companies like that, they make a lot of money by selling uh, all of these weapons that we need to maintain this like new age empire that we have. And so with Epstein being implicated as part of the intelligence community, that as also being a major donor to mostly the Democratic Party, but I think he was he was buddies with Trump for a while too, but I don't know if Trump was Republican or Democrat at that time. I'd have to look it up. Um, but I know he was a major Democratic donor, but I'm sure he donated pretty heavily to the right Republicans as well. So he is tied up in all of this mess, and then he conveniently ends up dead, and then it's just like, you know, well, move along, nothing to see here, case is closed. And so I could go way in depth, but I would have to provide some specific sources, so I'll have to wait on that. Um, but that's the biggest one I've been kind of following here lately. I posted a meme the other day uh, about the Las Vegas shooter, and that's another one I need to dig into because there's a lot of weird stuff there too. And another big one, uh, very similar to the Epstein deal, is you just don't hear about it in the news at all. You know, 50 people, or 40, 47, 49, something, but rounded up 50 people get killed there, and they find no motive on this guy or anything. Um, there's a lot of weird stuff around there, uh, and it's just, and then there's just like nothing to see here. So that's another weird one that I'm going to have to look into because I don't know what I'd do about it, but I'll tell you guys about it, I guess. But uh, I don't know. That's another just really weird one. Some of the more ridiculous ones that I'm a real big fan of are flat Earth and Australia doesn't exist. The Australia doesn't exist one is it's funny because I've never been to Australia, so I automatically have no argument um, one way or the other, or I can't confirm anything on that. So because I've never been there, so uh, all I can do is kind of just laugh at the arguments behind it, and I don't know how many people about are serious about this. I would imagine it's only a handful, and then it just got picked up on by somebody, and they tweeted out, and then it became a big thing, just of people being kind of incredulous and shitting on these other people that actually do believe it, and there's probably like 3 people that do. Um, but that's a weird one, but it's a fun one. Flat Earth is always a fun one because you can't really disprove it unless you've been in space, or you can't really prove it unless you've been to the ice wall. Um, so maybe one of these days we'll get a Burning Daylight live podcast from live from the ice wall or from a spaceship. One of the two. That we'll try that. And that way we can either prove or disprove the flat Earth theory once and for all. And yeah, maybe this round Earth thing is real. I don't know. I can't tell you. Uh, Another one I'm pretty interested in because there's been a lot of research into it, and I just kind of I was browsing through it the other night, and I didn't realize like how many books had been wrote on it. But Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that's one that is always been kind of a fun one where they fled to Bolivia, running from the law up here in the U.S. and supposedly they were killed by Bolivian police and buried there. Um, but there was a guy who he was like a forensic scientist that did a bunch of work in like post World War II, and he was the guy that actually identified the remains of Joseph Mengele, who was if I remember right, I know he was a top Nazi, but I think he was like the guy that designed the gas chambers and stuff. Real piece of shit. But this guy was the one that identified his remains, and they dug up the supposed corpses of Butch Cassidy and Sundance, and was unable. Maybe it was just Butch Cassidy. I'm not for sure. Um, but he conclusively determined that the DNA didn't match any of Butch Cassidy's known relatives. So that's another one. And then I think it must have been Butch Cassidy's sister had claimed that he made it back to the U.S. and he lived in Washington until 1937 under an alias, and that's where he died. So, and then he was uh, buried in an unmarked grave that only the family knew about. So, that's a pretty neat one too. I I don't know how you'd ever prove any of that, but um, I'm gonna have to read some of those books because uh, that's just a fascinating story in general. Uh, even before you get to the conspiracy part of it, it's just a just a classic, old west outlaw story. So, um, there's a lot of good um, a lot of good conspiracies out there. You can kill a lot of time going down those rabbit holes, and uh, some are a lot of fun, some are really depressing. Uh, but no, I don't know what it is about them that just everybody is intrigued by a good conspiracy theory. And it seems like the a lot of times when you start spelling them out, uh, there's the ones that seem the most ridiculous are the ones that end up coming true. So I believe it was Operation Northwood, which sounds real crazy because it was supposedly a plan to hijack an American airliner and crash it and blame it on the Cubans to overthrow Castro. And then it comes out after a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA request, that, yeah, that was an actual plan that was presented to Kennedy. And he said no. But that was an actual plan. So, uh, yeah, it was, and I think it was signed off on by like the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which are the head military leaders. And so you have the highest ranking military officials in the U.S. signing off on a secret plan to kill American citizens in order to spark a war with Cuba. So um, it's when you see stuff like that, it's hard to dismiss something like Epstein or or even something like 9/11 being an inside job. Well, I don't think it was. Like there is every reason to believe it because the government has done some pretty shady shit in the past. So it's well, and then along those same lines of 9/11 is Pearl Harbor. Um, there's quite a lot of evidence pointing towards Roosevelt knowing about this attack and could have thwarted it, but used it to draw us into World War II, which you know it just while it wasn't a false flag, it was definitely a flag that could have been averted. It seemed like so, or at least better prepared for. But uh, nothing conclusive. As always, that's the thing with these conspiracy theories is there's a lot of evidence pointing towards something, and very rarely is there anything conclusive, and that's what always makes them theories. And you know, it's it's kind of devolved into a term, conspiracy theory, that just kind of labels nutcases, which I guess I can argue with it if you called me that, but um, there's a lot of truth behind them. So whether the whole thing is real or not, that's a different story. But there's always, or almost always, I guess I haven't seen otherwise on any like real conspiracy theories, but almost always there is some very distinct grains of truth behind it. So I think that's what makes them so intriguing. But anyways, click on the post on Facebook and comment with your favorite ones or ones you want to hear me jabber about, and I'll the ones that intrigue me the most I'll do some research into and tell you my thoughts on them at a later date. But that's gonna do it for me tonight. It's been a long day and I need to go to bed. So um, anybody that watched, thanks for watching, and anybody who didn't, it'll be here, and I'll put this up as a podcast Thursday morning. So anyhow, go find me. Well, if you're watching me, you found me. Facebook, I'm Matt McKinley at MickerMac85 on Twitter and Instagram. Show page is Burning Daylight on Facebook and YouTube, and at Move Your Ass on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Go check out my website, burning-daylight.com. We're trying to turn that into just your total time suck for your phone. We're going to put up more and more content as we get to it, but we got a lot of memes right now. You can also listen to the show. Just click on the listen tab. But go check it out. We're trying to build that into something cool. So burning-daylight.com. And thanks to Loma Livestock for being a sponsor. And thanks to all you folks for tuning in. So on that note, I'm going to finish this beer and get to bed. So move your ass. We're burning daylight.